industry, it's very much a male-dominated field. And so being a geek and having nerdy interests and being able to talk Star Wars versus Star Trek and, you know, being able to discuss all of these different things with my coworkers, for me, helped give me a very level playing field among designers, because we could have these conversations and we could interact in a social way that if I had come in and been like, hey guys, have you watched the latest reality show and blah blah blah, and then it would have been one of those moments of, who is this crazy chick and what are we supposed to do with her? Like, so having that interaction helped me, at least as a lighting designer, be able to work with my fellow coworkers and be able to get along outside of just the job.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would say that, I mean, going back to as a kid, right, if you're playing D&D with the guys in your parents' basement, I mean, one, you can interact as an equal, right? I mean, you're there playing the game, and, you know, yes, they may try to get you to take the, you know, slutty magic user role or whatever, but you don't have to, right? So, you know, and so you can say, I want to be a fighter and whatever. But the other thing that I thought was really nice of it is not only does it allow the guys to treat you as an equal and you have this shared passion that you're geeking out about, but at least for me, growing up, it was also a marker of safety in terms of, like, my parents would let me hang out with the boys and play Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because it was so geeky, you know, it wasn't like I wanted to go to dances. And so there's this, it was almost camouflage in a way. It allowed for several years of interactions with boys that we might have been allowed otherwise.
That's actually, I never would have thought of that. That's actually kind of an interesting point. I mean, like, I never actually did gaming, but I know a couple of people here do, like, you know, Jen, you do magics, or you played Magic a lot. So, I know, like, what were your experiences like with that?
I would say that my experiences playing Magic, I usually got two reactions in competition. Either the person I was playing thought I was cute and wanted my number, and so would let me win, which did not allow me to advance my skills at all, or think about things in new ways, or re-strategize my deck lists. Or there was so much heckling and sort of down-talking that it was really difficult to not be intimidated by what was coming my way. There was just so much negativity around being a woman and playing this game because it was so heavily male-dominated that it became really difficult to, like, focus on my game. So I think that's kind of a problem.
Being a geek as a girl is a kind of funny thing sometimes. It's meant for me throughout my life. 2/3 of my friends have been male, consistently, throughout my entire life, ever since I was a little kid. And we're gonna blame my dad for this one, because he introduced me to Star Trek, you know, ever since I can remember. So, I mean, it goes down to even things like, earlier walking around the exhibition floor, people actually notice these tags that we're wearing actually say speaker on them. And so you can get into some kind of interesting conversations with people about why you're here. But I actually had one person say to me, oh, you have a speaker tag, so are you actually speaking, or did you just borrow that from somebody?
Wow, seriously?
Yeah. You were here for 15 minutes.
What does that person look like?
I'm not going to share so that, you know, you don't all hoard the table.
How did you react to that?
I mean, I'm used to this kind of thing, right? So you just kind of laugh it off, and then you start talking about the thing you're actually here to do. I remember, I'm also a swing dancer, and so I remember going to swing dancing, which there are a lot of huge nerds in swing dancing. I remember once being in Cleveland dancing. It was just kind of a social event, and one person there was wearing a shirt with an old Nintendo controller on it. And so I said something about Nintendo games, and, you know, I was asking him something about this. And he looked at me like, you have no idea what you're talking about at first, right? And then as I kept talking, you could see his eyes just kind of bug out, and he wasn't sure what to do with himself anymore.
I think it gets easier as you go in some ways because you can bludgeon them with your knowledge and skills. And then 5 minutes in, they're like, oh shit, you're the editor of the anthology that I desperately watched.
Now, I actually have a question for the panel. Do you ladies feel that in
in order to be accepted into the group, into the group of nerds, of males, of what have you, that you almost have to overcompensate in your geekery, like you have to be the best at whatever it is?
I don't think so, not in terms of the geekery. I had more problems in terms of the other side of things with like the aging hippies and the union guys who'd be like, this little girl has no idea what she's talking about, and I have to out-macho this like 400-pound union dude. And be like, look, I can appreciate that I'm 5'0" but I'm your boss, so get your ass to work. I never felt I had to out-geek geeks in order to fit in with I kind of let my skill set stand for itself and used my nerdiness as a way to be like, hey, we've got more in common than the fact that we do this one job.
Fair enough.
I think there's a difference between having like a core set of nerd friends who are mostly male and then being sort of thrust into an environment that is heavily populated by people you don't know, and you're interacting with them either on a Star Wars loving comic convention sort of way, or whether you're playing Magic or whatever it is that you love to do in the nerd world. So I think it really just comes down to like getting to know the people, and once they realize that like, you know what you're talking about, it's a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, actually, Marian, I thought that was an interesting point that you brought up, that your dad was okay letting you go to play D&D with a bunch of guys, whereas if you'd said, I want to go to a dance, it would have been like, no, you can't do that. And it kind of brings up the idea that almost sexuality and the fact that you are a female hanging out with a bunch of guys is almost like, oh no, they're doing geek stuff, that doesn't count because geeks are not sexy, or geeks don't like sex. Who knew? So I'm actually wondering, like, did it ever feel to you like being a geek and hanging out with guys and being able to like having these really cool discussions, having these really cool interactions? Did you feel like they were actually reacting to you as a female, or was it almost like kind of being neutered in a way, or like, hey, this chick knows about Star Trek, so she's not really a chick anymore? No? Please do tell.
I mean, I think that there's the assumptions of society at large, which includes my parents, as to, geeks as asexual or whatever else, right? I mean, just not threatening, not dangerous, not like your daughter bringing home the guy with the motorcycle and the tattoos, right? I mean, so, like, oh, there's the boy who wants to talk about Spock all the time, I should say this complete, I mean, you took my class, right? We must have talked about this, I mean, this Michi has completely bit my parents in the ass, right? Because I went to college several states away, and at the University of Chicago, which was full of geeks. From Chicago, and had a 70-30 male-female ratio. And
oh, it's really that percentage?
I went to college 20 years ago, so it was back then. So in '89, that's what the ratio was. And yeah, there was. I mean, it is lovely for a shy, nerdy, geeky girl to go to a place like that because it was very easy to date. And I ended up, as you know, I ended up writing erotica for 10 years and writing some. Initially, I wrote and published erotica for about a decade before moving into mainstream lit. So, and some science fiction, but. So yeah, I would say my parents were entirely wrong about this.
Well, it was like, especially there's the expectations of your parents, and then so it seemed like it was a pretty good interaction for you in college. I'm like actually wondering, did the rest of you ladies have similar experiences, or was it different in, say, being grade school or junior high school, college? Because I know for me, until I got to college, being a geek girl was actually kind of a huge liability. I did not have
I had
social
exactly the same experience. Yeah. If you're really geeky, at least I think this has changed. I think the internet has really changed this. But when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school, being a geek meant that nobody ever asked you to a dance. Nobody asked you on a date. You were kind of the weird kid who hung out with the other weird kids, maybe. And nobody really knew what to do with you. And then all of a sudden I got to college, and suddenly it became it was cool to be a geek, which was kind of mind-blowing. And I think this is going to be a generational shift for the kids who are in high school right now. It seems much more normal for them to be geeky and much cooler for them to be geeky. Whereas for us, you were completely weird until you hit college with a bunch of other people who were like you. And that's just not the real world. But after college, you find other people who are pretty similar. And you just spend your time with them instead of those weird kids who probably just went to community college and didn't do anything after.
College here? Anyone?
Nothing against community college. It's community college plus not doing anything after.
No, you're right, it's terrible.
They also stayed, you know, within 2 miles of the place we grew up, which was also not a very exciting place. But
I always say that I'm a late bloomer geek because I didn't actually ever play my video game until I was 25, which was, yeah, I know. You know, I grew up in a family that we went to art museums and traveled a lot, and I was a cheerleader, and I was a cheerleader, really? I was. You know, and I went to all the dances and hung out with the popular kids and did all that. But it was really interesting because there was this divide between the kids who were outwardly geeky and made no apologies for that, and the kids who were closet geeks, which were all the popular kids. It's like everything that the geeks were sort of open and unapologetic about, like all our popular kids, we watched it at home, you know, and didn't tell anyone, and we watched it at parties, and be like, yeah, that was really cool, let's not talk about it. We played 7 Minutes in Heaven, and we did not watch 3 episodes of Star Trek. And so I found that really interesting as I got